Hey guys, today I want to take a look at the latest polls that have been released for the 2022 Senate elections. We've had some pretty important polls come out this month in January of 2022. This is only 9 months away now at this point from the 2022 Senate races that will decide whether or not Joe Biden will be able to hold on to at least half of Congress, because the House at this point is essentially lost. The Democrats are racking up almost 50 retirements there. The Senate really is their last hope to hold on to power in the legislative branch. But even, the latest polls are not very positive for the Democratic Party at this point, without even looking at the generic congressional ballots. So I want to start off by taking a look at this one poll in Kentucky, and then we will go down the list. We have some very important polls out of battleground states like Georgia, Arizona, and New Hampshire, as well as this very interesting one from Maryland, where Chris Van Hollen is down by 12 points. So starting off at the very top of the list here with the state of Kentucky, Rand Paul leading by 16%. This really is not too significant. Rand Paul, of course, Republican, serving alongside Mitch McConnell in Kentucky. There's really no chance that he loses his re-election. In 2016, he won by 14 points, and in 2020, Charles Booker ran for the Democratic nomination to challenge Mitch McConnell. He lost to Amy McGrath, Booker being the much more progressive candidate. McGrath was able to defeat Booker, and then she went on in 2020 to lose to Mitch McConnell by 20 points. In 2022, Charles Booker is running again, this time against Rand Paul, who is, I would say, easier to defeat. However, it is still the very, very Republican state of Kentucky, so there really is no chance. Rand Paul is very, very likely to win his re-election to a third term. He does have some Republicans challenging him, however, none of them are significant, so Rand Paul will easily win his renomination and another 6-year term. So this was just a poll that was released that I wanted to take a quick look at. There's really nothing significant here at all. 16%, that's very standard for, a Republican in Kentucky. Of course, Trump did do a lot better in 2020. Trump won this state by a huge margin, almost 30%. And now I want to take a look at the latest polls that were released from the state of Georgia. I think Georgia is always one of the more interesting states to look at, just because of the amount of back and forth that we've seen between Warnock and Walker over the last year. So if you want to take a look at the latest polls that were released now, the numbers are better for Herschel Walker. Walker actually defeats Warnock by 4 points in the latest poll released earlier this month, while against Gary Black, Warnock does lead by 5%. Another recent Quinnipiac poll does show Walker up by 1% over Raphael Warnock, and another poll released last month in December also shows Walker ahead. So Walker has been leading in the last 3 polls released out of the state of Georgia. And before we look at these lower polls here, I do want to take a look. I do want to give you guys some context for this race. So in 2020, Raphael Warnock won the Georgia special election, which is why he is up for re-election again in just 2 years in 2022. So Raphael Warnock defeated Kelly Loeffler. The polls were pretty accurate for that race. Warnock was leading by 2% on election day for the polling average, with the adjusted 538 numbers, and then Loeffler, of course, down there at 47.2. So in the state of Georgia, of course, a majority must be reached, which is why there are runoffs in both of the Georgia Senate races, with Ossoff winning the regular race against David Perdue. So this was really a very special scenario for the Democratic Party, though, because in 2020, Joe Biden in November flipped the state of Georgia, winning it for the first time as a Democrat since 1992. Joe Biden winning 47.5% of the vote. You do not need a majority for the presidential election, only for the Senate ones. But for Joe Biden, this was a very major win. People thought that he would win North Carolina over Georgia, but Joe Biden actually ended up winning Georgia and lost the state of North Carolina by over a percentage point. So this was a very significant flip. It was the first time the Democrats had won it in the 21st century, and the first time since the first election of Bill Clinton. And so, going into January of 2021 with the special elections, the Democrats had 48 Senate seats, the Republicans still had 50, so the Democratic Party had to win both of the Senate seats if they wanted to win the Senate, and that would mean that they would win the House, the Senate, and the presidency following the 2020 election. And so you had record turnout for a runoff election in Georgia in 2021 earlier last year, and Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock both very, very narrowly won their races. The margin was actually pretty good concerning how Republican in these states were. Trump won, the state of Georgia by almost 4% in 2016, and I mean Johnny Isakson won the 2016 Senate election in Georgia by double digits. So this really was a pretty big deal that the Democratic Party flipped both of these seats, and the momentum for them going into this race really was huge. In 2022, they are not going to have that. They're not going to have that kind of excitement. The Democratic Party right now, although they control the entirety of the government, they are not approved of, and that is why 2022 is going to be a red wave year, because the country is not happy with what the Democratic Party is doing. A overwhelming majority of the country believe that the country is going in the wrong direction, and Joe Biden is one of the most unpopular presidents in American history. His popularity is about to be lower than Donald Trump's at this point in both of their presidencies. So Raphael Warnock is going to have a pretty tough battle ahead of him against Herschel Walker, who at this point, with an 84% chance of winning the GOP nomination, is essentially the Republican nominee for this race. He has been leading basically since February of last year, so Herschel Walker definitely is going to win this nomination as long as nothing too significant happens, and he will challenge the sitting Senator Raphael Warnock, who is not polling too well at all. The last poll that Warnock led in was after the 2021 general election, where Warnock led by 6 points, both over Herschel Walker. We have some other polls showing Warnock leading over Walker here by 2%, Warnock, under Walker by 2%, and of course these polls were from the from the runoff election in 2021. So, looking at all the polls that have been released, Herschel Walker currently is doing quite a bit better, and I do believe that Herschel Walker at the end of the day is going to defeat Raphael Warnock. The problem for Warnock is that the Democratic Party does not have momentum going to 2022. It is not going to be a good year for them, and Georgia, is significantly more Republican, at its most basic level than it is Democratic, because, if you just look at the partisan breakdown of the state, Georgia is more Republican, has been for a very, very long time, although demographics are shifting more and more in favor of the Democrats, with Atlanta growing by a lot every single year. Since 2020, there really has not been enough growth to make that significant of a change. I think that in a couple years, definitely Democrats can win the governorship. They can continue to win the Senate seats in this state, but 2022 I do not think will be it, and so that is why right now Herschel Walker is doing so well against the Democratic incumbent. And so now taking a look at the latest polls that have been released in the state of Arizona, with Mark Kelly being the incumbent, so you essentially see probably the same thing here as you saw in Georgia. In 2020, Mark Kelly was able to win the Arizona special election against Martha McSally. Kelly won by 2.3%. That was a pretty good margin for a Democrat, and these of course are the Georgia Senate special election results for 2021. But if you look at the 2020 Senate special election in Arizona, you'll see Mark Kelly with 51% to Martha McSally's 48.8%. So Mark Kelly defeated the Republican incumbent who was appointed by Doug Ducey to replace John McCain. Martha McSally also lost to Kyrsten Sinema in 2018, so this is 2 losses for her. Never won a Senate election in Arizona, but Mark Kelly is fairly popular in his home state, a lot more popular than Kyrsten Sinema. If Sinema was on the ballot, I think 100% she would lose. She has lost support from the progressive wing of her party. I believe the Democratic Party of Arizona has actually censured her for refusing to support abolishing the filibuster, so Kyrsten Sinema is going to have a pretty long road ahead of her for her 2024 re-election campaign, but I think Mark Kelly will have it a lot easier. He is a lot more popular, and currently the GOP nomination is split between Mark Brnovich and Blake Masters, who have really been going, back and forth with each other in terms of their chances of winning. And Doug Ducey, the governor, he is probably not going to run for this race. He cannot run for re-election as governor in 2022. First elected in 2014, Doug Ducey probably would have run for the Senate if not for the 2020 election, and Biden winning the state. Doug Ducey stood behind the election results and did not say that Trump won the state of Arizona, which made Trump attack him repeatedly, which is why he has not announced a campaign for the Senate. There is a chance that he still may run, but I think that is very, very unlikely. So currently it's Brnovich or Masters that is going to go up against Mark Kelly, but at this point, Mark Kelly does lead over both of them, 2% over Brnovich and 3% over Ducey. And to take a look at all of the polls that have been released from Arizona so far, you'll see here Mark Kelly defeating Mark Brnovich, by 2% in the latest poll, Ducey by 3%, Masters by 9%. These are polls released in September, against Brnovich by 4%, Brnovich by 10% in May. So the trend is going down currently for Mark Kelly, but we are still quite a ways away. And if you look at the 2020 election, you will see, though, that Mark Kelly was leading by much larger margins over Martha McSally. So the current polling numbers are not especially great for him, but I think that he definitely has a better chance of winning his re-election at this point than Raphael Warnock. And going back to the list of polls here, so I do think right now that Mark Kelly is still in a favorable position. I think that it will be a very hard re-election campaign for him, but at this point I think he still does have a very good chance as the Democratic incumbent. So I'm going to label this state on the map as well. And taking a look at the latest polls released in the state of New Hampshire with Maggie Hassan, who will be running for re-election and not against Chris Sununu, which is probably the one thing that is saving the Democrats in the Senate at this point. To take a look at the polls released from New Hampshire, you'll see that when Chris Sununu was in the race, Maggie Hassan lost to Chris Sununu in every single poll that was released. This was a very high-profile race until Sununu announced that he would be running for re-election as governor of New Hampshire and not running for the Senate. Chris Sununu definitely had the capability to win. He is a very popular Republican governor of the not, so Democratic state, but with him out of the race, with Kelly Ayotte, the former senator from the state, out of the race as well. Kelly Ayotte was the Republican incumbent who got defeated by Maggie Hassan in 2016. With both her and Sununu out of the race, Maggie Hassan will pretty easily win her re-election to a second term. Chuck Morse and Donald Boldeau currently are the two main frontrunners, and they're both polling, very, very well behind Maggie Hassan. Morse, down by 14 points, and Boldeau down by 7 points. So I think that this is going to be a pretty easy race for the Democratic Party to hold on to. There's a lot of people doubting Hassan's ability to win, but I don't think that it really will be too difficult. I think that Maggie Hassan will almost definitely hold on in New Hampshire. So these are essentially the latest polls that have been released for 2022. We do have this one poll here at the very bottom with Chris Van Hollen against Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan, of course, is the incumbent governor of Maryland. However, he will not be able to run for re-election in 2022 due to term limits. Chris Van Hollen, the incumbent Democratic senator who will be running for re-election. I think if Larry Hogan announces, which many Republicans want him to do, he is not a Trump Republican, but he is a Republican. He is the only Republican in Maryland that has a chance of defeating Chris Van Hollen. I think that Larry Hogan would make this race very, very interesting, but at the end of the day, the state of Maryland is still a very Democratic state. You do have this one poll showing Hogan plus 12%. I think that that is really not going to happen because it is a lot easier to win a governorship in a state where the main party in that state is not yours. But to win it on, a more national race like a Senate race definitely is a lot harder. In 2016, Chris Van Hollen won his re-election by 25 points, and at this point, Larry Hogan only has less than a month to file for the 2022 race, and I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think Larry Hogan is going to challenge Chris Van Hollen, but definitely it would be very, very interesting if he did. And so these are essentially the latest polls that have been released for the 2022 Senate races in the first month of 2022. As you can see, down here are polls released last year. I think that the numbers at this point, again, they do favor the GOP. I think that's undeniable. At this point, the Republican Party is currently set up for a good election this November, while the Democratic Party is, scrambling to do everything they can to try to bring this back, because the Senate was looking good for them at one point in time last year when Joe Biden was fairly popular. After Afghanistan, everything went south for them, and they're trying to recover, at this point in time. So I think that the latest polling of course, again, not great for the Democratic Party. If I were to fill in the other states on this map, let me just fill in the solid states for both the Democrats and the Republicans. Colorado, I'm just going to categorize it as lean for now. And then, but this is a race where even though Eli Bremer is a good candidate, I don't think that he can defeat Michael Bennet. For the GOP, essentially all of these races here in the middle of the country going to go for them. I'm going to put both Ohio and Missouri both as likely. North Carolina is a little bit of a toss-up, but the GOP definitely does have the clear advantage here. South Carolina, solid. Florida, I'm going to categorize that as likely. Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, probably going to win her re-election, and with Chuck Grassley in Iowa, it's going to be solid. So, the polls that we saw in Georgia and Arizona, definitely they're going to make a big difference on this map because Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, those are essentially the three remaining battleground states besides Georgia and Arizona. I think that these 5 states are going to have the biggest impact on who wins the Senate after 2022. North Carolina as well. The Democratic Party with Sherry Beasley definitely has a chance, but with even Cal Cunningham losing in 2020, I think 2022 it would be a very, very difficult state for the Democratic Party to win. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to join my Discord server if you have not. The link is at the very top of the description below, where there are monthly updates for these Senate races, in-depth updates, as well as a lot of other things. So make sure you join my Discord server if you have not. Like this video down below if you enjoyed it. Comment down below which party you think is currently doing well for 2022 and what you think the balance of power will look like in the Senate after November this year. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and I will see you guys in the next video.